Blessed to be a part of your day. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Phone numbers 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Joined now by Eric Eggers of the new book, Fraud, How the Left Plans to Steal the Next Election. You might remember Mr. Eggers as the head researcher for the Peter Schweizer bestseller, Clinton Cash. He joins us now here at KIDO Talk Radio with Kevin Miller. Eric, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Kevin. How you doing?
Not bad. So before we get rolling here on your new book, what was it like to be involved with the Clinton Cash book, considering you guys were out front and exposing a lot of issues that we still wonder why there isn't a follow-up? We still wonder why there hasn't been a more thorough investigation by the authorities. What was that like when you're in your I was going to say, in some bowels of the library looking at the Dewey Decimal System? I guess today it's all on computers, but when you first started looking at things and translating that to the printed word and figuring out how explosive that would be.
Yeah, I can tell you it was, we have a whole team here at GAI, and we spent quite a bit of time, researching that topic. I actually traveled to Haiti as part of the research and my role in the research for Clinton Cash and talking to people on the ground and just trying to get a sense of what the reaction was and what the feeling was about, the role that the Clintons had played in that part of the reconstruction after the earthquake. And I can remember being at the office and we stumbled across, there was two companies that received mining permits in Haiti for gold. It was unprecedented. It was the first time it happened in over 50 years. And we were on the website for one of the companies, and we saw Hillary's brother listed as being on the board of one of the two companies that got the gold mining permit. So that was a pretty unique moment, and I think I'll always remember that. But yeah, it was it's quite honestly just startling and humbling to be involved in something like that.
We have such faith in our voting system, never mind the allegations of the Russians and the this, that, and the other, and how Facebook tells us how to vote. But let's start with this. Most of us believe, voter fraud, that happens in a banana republic. It couldn't happen in America. Eric, it couldn't happen in Idaho.
Well, making no judgments about whether or not Idaho is a banana republic, I would say that my research indicates that the threat of voter fraud is real, and it really just boils down to the flaws and inaccuracies that exist in the system today, right? I mean, voting is basically an honor system. And when you look at a system that even President Obama's Commission on Election Administration admitted a few years ago that, as many as 16 million voter registrations in this country are flawed or totally inaccurate. The Supreme Court cited statistics that said it might be as high as 24 million. So you've got major problems. 248 counties in this country have more registered voters than citizens of legal voting age. And, at GAI, we decided, well, we've seen some of this stuff. We want to see, what about actual votes, though, not just registrations. And so we embarked on an unprecedented look at a national level of just how many errors and flaws are there in the system. And, what we discovered was shocking, Kevin. We found, talking about actual votes cast in the 2016 election, 2,100 what are known as double votes in the state of Florida alone. Now, what that means is that 2,100 times somebody in the state of Florida, 2,100 people cast ballots in the state of Florida, and then cast a second ballot in a different state. And there's actually nearly 3 million people that are registered to cast more than one ballot in more than one state nationwide. So, but to find out that 2,100 people had done it in Florida, as you know, that's nearly 4 times the margin of victory in the 2000 presidential election. So we thought, well, that's quite shocking. And, Secretary Kobach's primary win in Kansas, I think, was declared last night. That ended up being about 100 or 200 votes. So clearly the margins in elections can be quite small. And so it doesn't really take that much of an effort to exploit the vulnerabilities to manipulate political outcomes.
Well, let's take a look at this and how the left is already plotting to do this, if not in the 2018 cycle, the midterms, perhaps the 2020 presidentials. Eric?
Yeah, it's a great point. So one of the things that I lay out in the book, and you kind of take a look at, well, these vulnerabilities exist. Well, why do these vulnerabilities exist? And the state of Ohio right now is contesting a very close congressional election, and the margin, I think, is down to maybe about 1,000 votes, depending upon how many ballots they found recently. So But the important thing to remember in the context of this election is this idea that, the state of Ohio has had to fight efforts that have been funded by George Soros for the last several years to try to make their elections as secure as possible. So Soros funded the Clinton campaign attorney Mark Elias ahead of the 2016 election to try to block Ohio's voter ID law. They also had to fight a Soros-funded effort to continue to remove ineligible voters from their voting rolls. And luckily, the Supreme Court recently administered a ruling that said, okay, and a 5-4 ruling that Ohio was illegal and they were following the federal law by removing people that shouldn't be voting from their voter rolls. So that's, I think, important to note. And so you got the Soros-funded machine that's fighting any effort to exploit or fighting any effort to make voting more secure. But at the same time, they're funding groups like Acorn and La Raza that have had to change their names because of their chronic affiliation with voter fraud. And these groups are going out and they're rousting up as many voters as possible and funneling them through these gaping holes that the other organizations have fought to make sure still exist.
Eric Eggers joining us as we move along here. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead, please.
Well, I was just going to say, so in the context of the midterms or the 2020 presidential election, and Kevin, I don't know what your sense of it is, but down here in Florida where I live, I've never seen a level of political vitriol like the kind that we're seeing in terms of the hatred and opposition for the current administration. So what I think that means is you've got this rickety old system that's wrought with vulnerabilities and flaws. And you've got a group that thinks, there's nothing less than the blocking of a Supreme Court nominee on the ballot. There's nothing less than the abolishment of ICE on the ballot. There's nothing less than the impeachment of the president on the ballot. So you've got groups that are motivated to do whatever it takes to manipulate this political outcome, and you've got a system that's rife with vulnerabilities, and you've got motivated political entities that know how to exploit them. I spoke to a group of election lawyers a couple weeks ago, and these are the people that are fighting on the ground level to make sure that elections are safe and secure. And I think they were so positive about the reaction to this book because they said, finally, somebody is seeing the work that we're doing. The irony is the mainstream media will pretend that voting fraud is not a problem. But if you go and I document this in the book, that actually there's quite a bit of reporting about voter fraud, but it happens at the local level. And the real shame of it is that a lot of the things that you and I would consider voter fraud, which is, to me, anything that cancels out the true weight of an honest American vote, a lot of times things that we would consider voter fraud are actually legal, like submitting hundreds of absentee ballot request forms by the same person with the same signature. Or it's a practice known as granny farming, when they go out and they get with senior citizens and they just take their ballots and fill them out on behalf of the senior citizens. There's a lady that I talk about in the book that was caught with a notebook with thousands of transactions with different political campaigns, and she was caught with dozens of absentee ballots on her. So, this is a practice that happens, and I think, I'm humbled by the reaction to the book. It's been so positive because I think people are grateful to get a sense for the first time of really what the system looks like.
What about any possible reforms? And by the way, you're listening to KIDO Talk Radio. Eric Eggers joining us from Florida. Fraud, How the Left Plans to Steal the Next Election, available at Barnes & Noble and Amazon.com. What about the reforms? If the system is antiquated, if this truly is going on, where are all the do-gooders? I'm from the government. I'm here to help.
Yeah, it's a challenge. I was actually speaking to somebody who's a hydrogeologist, right? So he works with water. And we're talking about a recent environmental issue we're having in Florida, and he said that the toxins had all disappeared from this one spot, and they thought that they were pretty sure that they ended up in this other spot. And I said, well, wouldn't they know that? Wouldn't they just test for it? And he goes, no, we don't actually test for that there. He goes, and if you don't test for it, you don't have to worry about it. And so I think that's an important thing to remember is that, the government their job is to administer elections. They want as many people to vote as possible. But there really isn't any level of federal oversight or even at the state level to try to combat voter fraud. And when you do, right, you're labeled a racist or you're trying to suppress minority votes. So I think the three things that I lay out in the book that I think people should support are, requirements to have an ID to vote. If you want to buy a beer or if you want to get on an airplane or if you wanted to go to the Democratic National Convention, you'd need to have a driver's license to do any of those things. So I don't think it's wrong to say, yeah, you probably should have to show an ID if you want to go vote. And then states like Ohio and Indiana have been successful in removing hundreds of thousands of ineligible voters from their voting rolls. So I think we've got to be able to clean up voting rolls. And then at the federal level, I think it's time to have an honest look at, is there a way for us to have verification of citizenship when somebody registers to vote? Because the reality is that just does not happen today.
Let's talk a little bit about Florida. How crucial is it? And I mean, you have so many Floridas. You have North Florida, which is very culturally different from South Florida. And then I don't know what's going on in the middle of the state. But Florida is such a unique state. And, you know, we used to talk about Ohio, but I think Florida has replaced that as the bellwether state for Republicans.
Yeah, in Florida, in the middle of the state, I think everyone's just stuck in traffic in Orlando and Tampa. So that's what's happening in Middle Florida, so I'll save you the trip. Yeah, Florida's clearly going to be important politically, but Ohio is important politically as well. The former Secretary of State of Ohio just had a piece in the American Thinker where he talked about this effort by the left to try to, and it's really insidious, and this is something they've been doing for some time. They want to try to take over the people that administer the elections because they want to get sympathetic leftists there so that they'll have as lax of an oversight as possible, which only creates a more vulnerable opportunity. But yeah, in the state of Florida, you know, Donald Trump won the election in 2016 very narrowly. And we've got an important Senate race coming up. The current governor is running against the current senator. And I think polls show that's maybe a 1% to 2% margin there. So yeah, Florida continues to be an interesting state. You know, we've got an interesting gubernatorial primary right now as well, where you've got more of a Tea Party guy that's running against a guy who's been an established cabinet member for some time. So yeah, it's a fun time to be monitoring elections and monitoring political outcomes in Florida and all over the country.
And Eric, finally, what would you suggest to people in Idaho? We've got a big governor's election coming up, and you know people make these charges all the time in local elections, and and you documented this, where everything is won and lost.
Yeah, I think the key thing to remember is it sounds like a cliche, but every vote really does count. You know, as the election results in Kansas and as the election results in Ohio and elsewhere show, margins are incredibly narrow. So I think it's important that if you are somebody that is volunteering as a poll worker, just keep your eyes open and make sure you know what the laws are. And then don't be afraid to report something that seems suspicious to, the proper authorities. But I think, the real disclosure of voter fraud from my research comes from the campaigns and the lawyers that are involved on the ground, and then the local media that then do the follow-up investigating.
Finally, just from your perch in Florida, what do you make of the election of President Trump and just the multitude of arrows flying at him, and how he has redefined the landscape by using Twitter primarily to circumvent the media?
It's a different time, right? I actually worked in radio for a long time. And so, I've seen the role of traditional media shift and change. And we do seem to be so siloed these days. So it does seem to, I think Twitter actually has had two impacts. Number one is that Donald Trump obviously uses Twitter to drive media cycles and to communicate directly with his millions of followers. But Twitter also, I think, empowers and reinforces this idea that mainstream reporters are not just a byline, but they're personalities now, right? You see that these guys can get on Twitter and have a following and be a little bit of a celebrity. And so I think that's why you see this more of an oppositional relationship, because it's not just I'm going to report what the president says, but now I'm somebody, I've got my own followers, and I'm going to feel free to kind of engage in these discussions. So, yeah, Twitter has certainly changed the way the media operates. I mean, I think. Do you agree with that, or what's your take on it?
I would agree with that, but I'm surprised we've lost you from the spoken word to the written word.
Mm-hmm.
Usually we get to keep you guys, but it warms my heart that you're from radio, because it's so under siege and underappreciated, but still very effective in reaching the voters, reaching the people that matter.
Yeah, it's everybody's got a constituency, right? So yeah, radio is a lot of fun, but I enjoy working on the books and working with Peter and the team at Government Accountability Institute, and this is my first book, but the direction's been very positive. So And if anybody wants to find out, more about it, they can just go to voterfraudbook.com. We've got lots of articles if they want to see more examples of where voter fraud's been showing up. Even since the book was published, you see new reports all the time. And writing and there's any number of ways to get your message out these days, whether it's radio or social media or books.
Eric, glad that you got us back on message. We appreciate you. Please get the book at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and we'd love to have you back, sir.
Great. Thanks, Kevin.
All right. Eric Eggers joining us. Your reaction next. How safe do you believe our system in the Gem State is when it comes to protecting us against voter fraud? You're listening to Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. Blessed to be a part of your day. Kevin Miller in the morning. Let's go to the publisher of the Gem State Patriot, gemstatepatriot.com. Tea Party Bob, good morning, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Miller. I figured I'd call early and maybe we could actually have a conversation.
Well, bless your heart.
Because of the size of our state, I would say that there's very little, if any, chance of voter fraud compared to states with much larger populations like Ohio or California. Your blog that the governor's race is over is pretty well on target, but only if the conservatives get off their duffs and come out and vote in November, unlike what happened in May when only 34% of the registered voters showed up at the poll.
Well, before we get going on that, I want you to, because again, you're much more in contact with the folks throughout the state. What do you make of the Jordan effect? And we had a young lady, Sarah, say she's worried about the Californians and the millennials, pulling off an upset with Jordan, letting her ride on to victory. Your thoughts?
Well, again, as I said, you're going to have to make sure that.
Well, we lost Tea Party Bob. Are you
there?
Are you on the range or something, or somebody jamming your
here.
phone? I don't know what's going on.
I'm here. Are you there? Are you there?
No. We've been here. You're the one that disappeared.
No, I don't know what happened. I don't know. I have no idea.
Your friends in the Obama administration.
Nah, that's Betsy Russell. She's disconnecting my communications again. She doesn't want me out there. No. Yeah, that's kind of a joke. The fact that she came out and wrote about, this fake news, which she is the leader of the brigade, that Jordan has an 8-point lead. I'd like to know who ran that poll.
Well, not an 8-point lead that she's within 8 points of Brad Little.
Oh, it's a joke. Come on. I'd still like to know who wrote the poll and how much they paid him to skew it, because there is no way in heck that could be true.
Well, or where they took it, in Boise?
Well, yeah, if you took it in downtown Boise, it's very possible if you took it in District 19 or 18, but certainly not if you took it out here in even in Meridian. I'm not happy with the fact that she's even running. But
now, why are you not happy that she's running?
Well, when you start seeing people of this ilk running for office, you always get concerned about what's happening to your state.
Now, wait a minute. What do you mean
they're able to run?
Well, wait a minute. Now, of this ilk, she's a state representative from northern Idaho. Of course, she says
she's a liberal progressive
but
state
she says,
representative.
Right, fair enough. And then she says she lives in the North End. She has an apartment, so I don't know where she lives.
Well, it's kind of like Priscilla Gidding. Does she live in Idaho County or in Ada County? Does anybody know where anybody lives anymore? What do you call home anymore?
Star, Idaho is my home.
They always make a big deal out of this. Paulette Jordan, what bothers me is the fact that she is even running and even has a place on the ballot. That bothers me.
Well,
because
again,
the state is changing.
I agree with you. I thought our friend, Mr. Belukoff, and it's unfortunate that the people that Mr. Belukoff hired didn't feel compelled to come on our program, but A.J. Belukoff, a class man, whether you agree with him or not politically, I thought it was the Democratic Party's big mistake, but, that's why elections matter. And so getting back to it, you might have this millennial-fueled, California-induced liberal progressive come in and make a race out of it. What do you think?
Well, I don't think most of the millennials even go to the polls anymore. They'd rather be out there protesting. So I'm not so concerned about that now. What I am more concerned about is the progressives that are moving into our state from out of state, or even the conservatives that really aren't conservatives moving into our state from California or Oregon or Washington. Now, they've already been tempered by the governments in the states they're coming from. So, yeah, there's a concern. That's one of the reasons I'm trying to move further out of town. Maybe I'll move out by Steve. Then I can become a hemp tycoon like him.
Apparently.
Well, like I said, I see the changes taking place. I'm sure you see them too. I think we still have, maybe 5 or 10 years before they actually get a foothold here.
Well, we're gonna continue that conversation. I like that idea of the libs taking over. So we're gonna continue that on after the news.
Well, I won't be around here to see that happen. I'll be out in the hinterlands. That's
reassuring. Hopefully you'll be here after the news. Tea Party Bob, GemStatePatriot.com. Always appreciate you, sir.
It's a pleasure. Have a great day, Kevin.
All right, you as well. 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Are you worried about the libs taking over? Boy, there's a good one. Here at KIDO Talk Radio.
For the organization for a long time before you were working in government. Sarah Sanders today says she couldn't guarantee there's no recording out there of the president using the N-word. Can you guarantee there's no tape out there?
Well, look, the White House is a diverse group of folks. Obviously, the president, I can't speak for him. I know that he's told me that he has never said this word, that it's not in his vocabulary. I take him at his word.
As someone who's worked for him for a long time, would it shock you if he had said
Absolutely. The Donald Trump that I know doesn't see black and white. He sees success and failure. And whether that manifests itself as a person, a company, a place, a television show, he certainly makes no distinction, and he doesn't categorize those successes and failures into race, religion, and gender.
When he referred to Omarosa Manigault Newman, who was a senior advisor, very highly paid by taxpayer money, as a dog, was that appropriate?
Well, look, the president has referred to a lot of people as dogs. He referred to Robert Pattinson as a dog from the Twilight movies, Mitt Romney, Bill Maher.
Ted Cruz, I believe.
Right, Ted Cruz. To me, these aren't terms that are necessarily derogatory or racial. What they are is somebody biting back and fighting back
but it's
having been wrong.
I mean, it is derogatory to call somebody a dog.
Well, I mean,
I'm not saying. It's an insult. It's not a. Word.
I know he didn't mean it as a compliment, but at the same time, he said it to a lot of people.
So
for the media to spin it into something racial is really.
Well, I don't think it's media's.
So there we have Anderson Cooper with Lynn Patton, an African American former member of the Trump administration, Trump family advisor. She's with HUD, defending the president. So I love this. Never mind what's going on with the Russians. Well, we know what's going on with the Russians, with Peter Strzok being fired, with everything else, with gasoline prices going up. The fact that the president called Omarosa a dog is now what we should be going after. And look, we all, hopefully, like fine wine, get better with age. I hope that happens for you. I know that being here with you has changed me. Maybe it's mellowed me. Maybe I believe it's made me more empathetic to folks. We all have a long way to go. We're all a work in progress, right? And things that I would have said and done 10 years ago, 20 years ago, I'm going, who is that guy, right? Maybe you have the same type of viewpoint. And it's funny, when I heard the president call her a dog, I'm going, wow. But you remember, those of you that are probably over 40, that was a common term when and maybe you've seen this. If you're younger, you can go back and watch some of the movies in the 80s, and the common term for a attractive female would be a fox. Oh, she's a fox, right? And if somebody wasn't attractive, and I guess you could say a male as well. You wouldn't call a male a fox, but they're a dog. That person is a dog. That was very common back in the day. Well, what does Sally look like? Well, Sally's a dog. What about Sissy? Sissy's a fox. Now, should the president do this? Look, of course not. It's not acceptable. It's below the dignity of the office. Obviously, he's very hurt by this betrayal. Obviously, he's lashing out. He's been called all these names, these allegations. He's been embarrassed. Does it make it right? No, of course not. Yesterday, I was talking to our great friend Jim Stevens at Sandler Sales, and he said, Kevin, what would you like your eulogy to be? Authenticity, credibility, and integrity. I think that's what we all want. Those of us that live by a code, that strive to be better individuals, that try not to be so petty. But to call her a dog, I don't know. Then isn't he just going down to her level? Now, that the press attacks him on this, is Trump derangement syndrome gone amok?
I think it's a lot of people raising the question, given what you just said about
again, I've just listed like 5 white men who he's also said it to, and that's not racist.
But just for the president of the United States, with all the honor and stature and importance of that office, do you think it's appropriate for the president of the United States to call on anybody?
I think the American people voted for somebody who speaks their mind. I've been with him for almost 10 years. Arguably saying what he thinks and what he feels has resulted in a lot of success for him. One could say it's what put him at 1600 Pennsylvania.
Help me understand.
And I think the American people would rather have somebody who speaks their mind than have somebody who runs a sentence past 80 people.
Help me understand, because, again, you've worked for the Trump organization. You know it inside and out. The president during the campaign said he hires the best people. He hires the best people, said it over and over again, and it was a very effective part of his campaign. Is Omarosa Manigault, was she one of the best people, really?
There we have it. Let's get to your calls. That's from Anderson Cooper on CNN. 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Let's go to Pam in Boise with Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Pam.
Good morning, Kevin. Thanks for taking my call.
Well, you're quite welcome. Thanks for calling in.
Sure. My comment has to do with a perfect comment for what was just said. And I think this shows the problem when you hire for diversity versus qualification. And I think that's exactly what Donald Trump was doing with Omarosa, to have a black female in the office. As for him calling her a dog, you know what? Is it appropriate? No. But you know what? Again, they're focused on the wrong thing. I mean, the reason he called her a dog was because she betrayed him. I mean, taping conversations in the White House, not acceptable. And nobody's talking about that. So I just think...
Well, now, Pam, again, you remember back many years ago when that was a popular term, dog?
Yeah.
And again, we've all come a long way. But I forgot all about that.
I think that people are reading too much into it. He was mad. He says what he thinks. And I think it's actually probably a nicer comment than he could have come up with. I mean, what a betrayal. And I just think, this is a lesson in hiring for diversity versus qualification.
How important,
I think,
Pam, I'm sorry to interrupt. How important is loyalty to you? And I think President Trump really liked her and liked that she was polarizing, and that's why it hurts so much.
Absolutely. I mean, she wouldn't be where she is without Donald Trump. And to do this to him, I just think, who's going to hire her now at this point? I mean, after this. So hopefully this book does well for her, because after this, she's done. No, I guess CNN will hire her probably, which they didn't want anything to do with her before. But now that she's got this book out, they want to talk to her. But absolutely, what a betrayal to him. And again, he's just got it coming from every different direction. And he's got my total forgiveness for calling her a dog. I think it was probably, the nicest thing he can say in his anger for her betrayal.
Pam, I agree with you. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. Have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to KIDO Talk Radio. And, again, if Donald Trump called her the most Omarosa, the most attractive woman on God's green earth, they'd go after him for being condescending. Nobody likes to be betrayed. Nobody likes to be betrayed personally or publicly, whether it's in our marriages, whether it's in our lives. Loyalty. It goes down to it. Psychologists say this, when we have something invested in someone, when we have someone invested and we put our thoughts and prayers and souls into them, and then they betray us, it hurts us even more, because part of their success is our success. And you have Donald Trump calling her a dog. Now, again, we live in a politically correct world. I wonder how many times, if we called anybody a dog today, whatever happened to sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me? I'm sure Omarosa's called Donald Trump worse than a dog. But we live in a world populated by, and again, those of you that love God, that love America, that are millennials, or that aren't millennials. I mean, the millennials, they'll tell you, man, they march to a beat of a different drum. I'm not bashing them. I'm calling it out. So if you're conservative and you're smart and you follow us, you get it. But, I mean, could you imagine? I mean, you would go up to someone and you'd call them a dog. They'd probably cry. And really, Omarosa's got a lot of miles on the odometer, with all due respect. She's no millennial. But we always look for the outrage, right? It's like that person in work. They're always looking to be offended, to run to HR, to be the drama person. Oh, did you see this? No, save the drama for your mama, right? So at 580-5436, is this a major offense, calling Omarosa a dog? Or if the shoe fits, do you wear it? Brenda in Boise with Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Brenda.
Good morning, Kevin. I listen to a lot of radio when I get a chance, but I'm not glued to it. So pardon if I'm being redundant, if someone has said this before. But my connotation or association with dog would be like dirty dog, D-A-W-G.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she betrayed him, and he's human. And, okay, name calling is, what it is, but there's so much attack on him every single second of the day, 24/7. I mean, I don't think it was, I don't know, actually, it's not my place to say, but to me, because I'm 56 and our president is older than I, so I think it refers possibly back to, like, dirty dog.
So you're saying dirty dog, not talking about her appearance.
Right. Yeah, because you mentioned, Fox, and that was junior high for me.
Hold on. You remember that when, and let me apologize in advance because we live in a politically correct, overly sensitive world, but a hot chick was a fox, and a not-so-hot chick was a dog.
Right. Yeah. People, that's just how it was and in our society, and I think it's just a little bit, what do you call layover from old school terminology. I didn't, hear every tiny nuance and, hear it from you over and over and over, but for him to say that was my first response, or my reaction was like, dirty dog. How could you? How could she? And again, nobody's really paying attention to what she did. That's beyond comprehension of anybody that's moral with any character and integrity. No, she is a dirty dog. W-G, A-W-G.
All right.
That's my...
Brenda, thank you. That song, Walking the Dog, or whatever that. Anyway, I'm sure Ray and I will have that for us. Thank you, Brenda.
Thank you, Kevin.
Bye-bye. 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Back to the, I mean, look, if you're going to go after the president and he calls you a dog, is that a capital offense? Now, the politically correct Politburo would say yes. Personally, would I say that these days? No. But Donald Trump plays the game by the Trump rules. Like old Michael Jordan. If you don't know who he is, you can YouTube him. The greatest basketball player ever. The Jordan rules. The Trump rules. But to sit there and say it's offensive after she called him mentally deranged? Omarosa, if you can dish it out, you have to take it. What do you think? Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Howdy ho, let's go to Max with Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. Max, you remember the term dog, don't you?
Yeah, I sure do. Yeah. I don't understand it, but it seems like our entire language, the entire lexicon, is being rewritten by liberals. What can't we say next?
I still like that. Remember that song, Walking the Dog, bow, wow, wow, yippee-yo, yippee-yay? Remember that?
Yeah, but I don't know if Omarosa looks like a dog. She doesn't look canine. She looks more simian. I worded that carefully. Dug into my dictionary.
You know, you're going to get me in trouble with the politically correct Politburo.
Well, that would be a badge of honor. I would personally pin that on you, my friend.
Well, what do you make of this, though? The media continues to try to do this. Is it presidential to call her a dog?
Why not? Look what she's called him. He took her, gave her a job, a better job than anybody in this country would have given her. He gave her a chance at greatness. She turned around and stabbed him in the back.
Yep.
And it's not even a legitimate backstab. She's a lying dog. She's a lying dog.
All right, Max, thank you for the call. Let's quickly go to Mike Tracy. Mike, we got about a minute, and we're rolling. All right.
Good morning,
Mike.
Kevin. How you doing?
Pretty good, Mike.
Hey, just wanted to, you had talked about the 8% difference between Paulette Jordan and Brad Little, and it made me chuckle. It reminded me of the 1996 race between Walt Minnick and Larry Craig. 3 weeks before the election, Walt Minnick came out with his poll that said he was only behind by 2 points. And a public poll that the media used to do called the Mason-Dixon poll came out a day later and said Larry was up by 20 points. And Larry ended up winning the election by almost 20 points. So wherever that 8% came from, it is mighty suspect.
Great call, Mike. Thank you. Cindy, we've got a guest coming up. You're welcome to hold, or you've got about a minute. What do you say?
Oh, that's okay. I'll just hold. I just wanted to speak to voter fraud, and I'll just hold. Bye-bye. Go.
Ooh. The music's not playing yet? What's that? Phil for a while? Okay. Short, concise, to the point. Hey, coming up, Fox News on the radio. Remember, KIDO Talk Radio is your home for Fox News on the radio. Very proud to be associated with that great brand of Fox News. Coming up, much more on Paulette Jordan versus Brad Little, Omarosa versus President Trump. Calling someone a dog? How overly sensitive have we become? Or not presidential?